Welcome to the Power of Your Lymphatic System, Part 3. We made it. So if you missed Part 2, you can watch the recording on YouTube, and I also have a copy on Instagram as well. So I want you to take a moment and reflect with me. Think about a time in your life where you experienced being in danger. Maybe your life was threatened. Maybe you experienced a death in the family. Reflecting back on that time, did it feel like you experienced that fight, flight, and then freeze? Did you feel those emotions in the body? So what you were experiencing and what you were feeling was the Cisterna Chyli, aka our vagus nerve. So let's take a look at this diagram. I'm going to show you where our vagus nerve, Cisterna Chyli, lives in the body. It's this, you can see this really large green lymph node. And that is where the vagus nerve lives. So the vagus nerve is the longest of all the nerves in the body. It starts in the brain and it comes all the way down to just underneath the rib cage near our diaphragm. And so let's go back to that. So it's right here. Our diaphragm kind of umbrellas like this. And then right underneath that, boom, Cisterna Chyli. And it goes all the way up to the brain. From there, it also, or from the original point where the Cisterna Chyli lies underneath the rib cage, it also communicates to all parts of the body. So let's go over some examples of the vagus nerve stimulation. For example, I'll share some personal ones. When I first started my business, there were a couple times where if I was off to a private client giving them a massage, I have several things that I need to bring with me. And on occasion, there were a few times where I forgot my sheets. So I arrive at their house, you can imagine arriving at their house, ready to give them their massage session, and I unpack my table, set everything up, and I don't have my sheets with me. So it's that horrible feeling where your stomach almost just, or your heart almost sinks down, and I just felt a wave of panic. I feel very embarrassed and that I didn't have my act together. So I really felt irresponsible. So that feeling, that wave of emotion is your vagus nerve firing up. It is that trauma response. Next, having to confront somebody. I do not ever like confronting anybody. So, but when I have to, when it is necessary to do that, I definitely can feel that vagus nerve firing up. It's that really intense heat, and it definitely spreads throughout my body. It's almost this hot, cold feeling. Hopefully you relate to that. That is definitely how I feel whenever I am confronting someone. So now these are color-coded, so those red ones are those ones that I definitely do not enjoy experiencing, but let's go through a couple that are a different side of that spectrum. So going live, actually literally going live. These lives, this actually used to be a red vagus nerve example, but I moved it to the teal color because I was able to recognize that it was activating my vagus nerve and disturbing my emotion. But now what I do is I've been able to work through that emotion and now gain confidence and in myself that I know what I'm talking about, presenting here with you today, and there's no reason for me to feel any nervousness. Obviously, practice comes into play here. I've been able to do this multiple times, so I've built up that almost endurance like an athlete coming live. So it's not as scary. The other end of the spectrum is almost that butterfly feeling, that fluttery feeling. I'm excited to be here. I love talking about this, and I love taking what I've learned and being able to reteach it in my own way, fires me up. So that's another way that right now my vagus nerve is definitely being stimulated, but on a more positive part of that spectrum. Last but not least, that going to Disneyland feeling, especially when I was a kid, I loved it. And I almost couldn't get to sleep the night before. Maybe you also have experienced this, maybe with a holiday coming up or your birthday coming up, anticipating that excitement. That is your vagus nerve stimulated, but on a more positive side of that spectrum. When I was going through my massage therapy training back in 2005, I learned that our bodies can store our emotion. It stores our trauma. It stores the experiences that we've had in our past as children. So when I was in massage school, I was 19 years old and 19. And about a year and a half prior to that, I literally just graduated from high school at 17 from the last group home that I was at. And the 4 years from age 13 to 17, when I was in the group homes, I was doing a lot of intense therapy for the trauma that I experienced as a child. And so when I learned that, when you go through, it was 4 years, or maybe you've gone through even more than that, you kind of feel like, hey, I've done the work. So I did the work in expressing and talking through it. However, the body, the muscle tissues, our cells, it still remembers everything that we've been through. So you can still experience anxiety. You can still experience those bouts of anger and things like that. So learning about this got me thinking, and I think it really did start to help me evolve in learning how I started to slowly take the holistic approach towards my mental health. That started to spark that. And I have just now have been realizing that that was kind of the moment where I really started taking this approach and swerving in that direction. So how does stored emotion in our body impact how your lymph flows? So that unhealed trauma causes your fascia, your muscles, your nerves, etc., all the parts in our body to then twist, tighten. So imagine that trauma that you have as a kid. What were your postures? Really, really confined, maybe curled up in a ball, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what your tissues are doing in that sense. They constrict, they tighten, they're protecting themselves. They're freaking out. But they stay that way if you do not move through that trauma. So that twisting and that tightening results in restricted blood flow. So that's restricted blood flow, that's nutrients to your tissues, that's communication from your brain to your pinky toe, okay? And then that evolves into less oxygen, less nutrients, less oxygen. You're starving those muscles, starving those tissues. And then what happens? Then the pain cycle happens. So that can evolve into all different directions. So I want to circle back to our lymphatic system and explore the main nodes that I have learned how to treat in the body. So these are what Dr. Perry calls the big six. We're not going to do that today, but these are the 6 main areas, and I just want us to explore and palpate them together, okay? So the very first one we're going to do is supraclavicular. That just means above your collarbone. So you're going to palpate for your collarbone on either side, doesn't matter. On that collarbone, you want to go above the collarbone, almost kind of like you're touching the shoulder and your neck. That is supraclavicular, okay? Next, you're going to take 2 fingers and you're going to place it behind your earlobe almost and open your jaw. It should kind of have a little divot in there. That is upper cervical. Okay, that's the upper cervical lymph node, a main node. Next is pectoral. You extend your arm out. It's just that little area right here. Abdominal. So we learned where our cisterna chyli is, right underneath that rib cage in the center there. So you're going to put one hand there and one hand below that. So it should be right underneath the rib cage, and then this one should land almost over your belly button. That is where your abdominal, where your cisterna chyli, your vagus nerve, lymph nodes are. It's a big old branch right there. So those two hands stacked like this will cover that whole abdominal node range. Next is inguinal. This is the crease of your upper thigh and your hip. So go ahead and you can take the pinky side of your hand and just go ahead and just press in the crease just a little bit. That is inguinal. Last but not least, posterior knee. Posterior just means the back side of your body. So you can just take your hands and just place them underneath the knees. You can just easy bend the knee, and that's where the posterior lymph nodes are behind the knee. So these are the areas that we will be first concentrating on. So I just wanted you to kind of get an idea, and it's just kind of fun to palpate them on your own. Just kind of get an idea and a sense of where these live in the body. So when I am working with a client and we are treating the lymphatic system, now every single private client that I'm working with now, we are working through, I'm slowly but surely working through the assessments and getting them comfortable doing some of the treatments on their own. So when you work with me, this will be included in your work. So, and when you work with me one-on-one, that means in my coaching program, I have a hybrid coaching program called the Holistic Approach, or virtual yoga classes. So if you would like to work with me one-on-one, I'm literally on my yoga mat right here, and I'll have my camera, and I can support you and guide you through yoga classes that are tailored to what you need. So we would go through the assessment of the lymphatic system, and I would give you a treatment plan for that, and then we would do your yoga class. So that's kind of how the order would be for that. After the assessment, we create your treatment plan, and I don't just leave you hanging there. I give you support in between the sessions. So the support looks like an online community. So you have access to the community where I offer resources and tools to support you in maintaining and regaining your mobility, and it's called the Holistic Approach Community. This is where you'll have access to the recorded classes. I do live classes just like this on YouTube, so you can come in and join me live, and you can interact, ask questions, things like that. And I will also be doing interviews with health professionals, so you'll be able to also access that as well. And ultimately, the goal of the Holistic Approach community for all of my members is that I'm hoping to teach you how to heal yourself. Take the holistic approach towards your mental health. And I believe that all of the resources and tools and classes that I teach allow you to begin that journey, and with me as your support mentor guide. So let's review some things to expect. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm really interested in learning more about this and working with you one-on-one, but I'm a little curious on, what should I expect? What is going to happen to me when we do this? So there's a couple things that I'd like to review. So these are color-coded again. So the teal are more positive and the red are more negative side effects. But doing any type of lymph work, you are going to have a release, whether it be positive or a little bit more on the negative side of the spectrum. So the first one is rush of energy. When was doing the assessment, when Dr. Perry was putting us through the assessment during the Lymph Mojo course, I personally experienced a rush of energy. I felt alive. I felt very giddy. And so during our lunch break, I just felt like I was just like Little Miss Chatterbox. Next, temporarily dizzy, or you might feel a little nauseous. And that just means that the lymph may have been stuck or obstructed for a longer period of time. And sometimes when you are releasing those toxins back into the body, you're going to feel a little icky first before you start feeling better. Next, when you work through and you're doing the lymph work with me, you might experience increased range of motion. So if you were experiencing maybe a tight ankle or a tight shoulder, with a few rounds of this lymph work, you might experience increased range of motion and strength. Also, you could detox immediately or within 24 hours. And this can range from anything between having a headache, feeling tired, feeling fatigued in your body, shaking, and or having a fever. So just paying attention to those things and making sure that if you are experiencing one of the effects in red, that you make sure that you hydrate yourself immediately. You want to try and flush that out and help the system, help your lymphatic system detox and get that all out of there. So I want to wrap all of this up, part 1, part 2, and now part 3, with returning to my favorite metaphor, Finding Nemo. So we are responsible for moving our lymph. If we are not moving our lymph, it is indeed as if we are swimming in our own waste. And I don't know about you, but that just grosses me out. It's not at all appealing. So I want to do everything and learn everything I can to clear that out. It is a very powerful system, and it is responsible for a lot of the, if not all, the dis-ease that we can experience in our bodies. So let's review really quick. There are 2 things to do to move your body: breathing and movement. So remember, our heart, our circulatory system has a pump. It pumps 24/7. Our heart pumps our blood throughout our body from head to toe all day, every day. It never takes a break. Our lymph system, on the other hand, does not have a pump dedicated to pump itself. So we are responsible for that. And the way that we can move our lymph is through breathing, actively breathing, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. When you inhale through the nose, the diaphragm pushes down on your organs, pressing and almost squeezing them. And then when you exhale through the nose, it brings the diaphragm back up. So it kind of does this pumping action. The movement is helping the lymphatic fluid flow and drain and flush out, detox, and be able to be eliminated properly. You don't want the cellular waste and all of that to get stuck in your system. That causes, like we've learned, an array of issues. So, coming back to that lovely fish tank metaphor, thinking of Nemo in the very beginning of his life, he was born in the ocean, and here is a great beautiful picture. The water represents our lymph, the fish represents our organs, and the structures, the coral and the rocks represent our skeletal system. And look, everything is working together. The water is clear, the fish can breathe, the fish can move and flow, and everything's moving in sync together. Everything is working at the optimal level. When we neglect it, I believe once we have that knowledge, it's our responsibility to take action on it. So now you have this knowledge, and so I hope that you take this and are able to start implementing it. If you would like support and guidance implementing it, reach out to me. I love talking about this and helping people with this. And I'd love to work with you one-on-one. If we don't take care of our lymph system, that lymph fluid is going to become mossy, it's going to not flow right, and it's going to be obstructed. The little pathways of our lymph system are very small, so if they are obstructed with any toxins, viruses, bacteria, etc., that are blocking that, we are responsible for moving that. And if we don't, it will get worse and worse and worse and worse. So the question of this whole series is, which fish tank do you want to live in? Do you want to live in this beautiful, clear tank, or are you okay, satisfied with living in a mossy fish tank? So thank you so much for taking the time to watch all 3 of these videos. This was a lot of fun for me to present and to share with you. It was a blast learning about the lymphatic system, and I'm so excited to start implementing these with clients and the members in my community. So I'd love it if you could share your main takeaway for part 3 in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this live. I truly appreciate your attention, and I hope to see you in the community or on